Alrighty, guys, truthfully, I didn't know if I was going to be able to get this segment out in time for this week's podcast episode. It was a bit of a tight squeeze when you consider that Stranger Things, Season 5, Volume 1, came out on Wednesday evening in the United States, dropped 4 episodes, and I usually try to lock these episodes in, the following week's podcast episode in, by Friday afternoon. So it was a bit of a tight squeeze, especially considering, I don't know, there's Thanksgiving and had family and all that kind of stuff, but thankfully, especially for my own excitement, but also just for the YouTube channel and for being able to discuss it in as quick of a manner as possible, we got through it. I was able to watch all 4 episodes of Volume 1, Season 5 of Stranger Things, was watching it with a friend, and yeah, I have thoughts. I have so many thoughts. I'm sure you guys have so many thoughts, so let's not waste any more time. Let's dive into it. This is going to be a non-spoiler and then spoiler review for Stranger Things Season 5, Volume 1, which means we're going to be talking about just the 4 episodes that have been released. I haven't seen any of the other ones, and truthfully, as we get into this as well, I will not be able to actually discuss the other volumes and the finale, I guess Volume 2 and then the finale, in as timely of a manner as I will be traveling during the times when they are released, so hopefully we'll get to it as quickly as we can in the new year. But as for right now, let's talk about Volume 1. Guys, Stranger Things is one of my favorite shows of all time. I understand, as we've been doing, in the background of all this, I've been rewatching Stranger Things actually, and doing rewatches of seasons 1 through 4, and so posting those as we go along. I think you'll see the season 1 rewatch video or segment in a couple weeks. And as I've been rewatching Stranger Things, I kind of get it, right? Because people have this, I think the general perception out there is that Stranger Things season 1 is so good, it's so amazing, and then it kind of just drops off from season 2 and 3, and then season 4 comes, and it's just amazing again. And, for the longest time, I was kind of like, I don't know if I get that fully, because I really liked seasons 2 and 3. I did. In rewatching seasons 2 and 3, though, this time around, I kind of understood what people were talking about. I still really like season 2, and I don't care. I know some people really hate season 3. I like season 3. I might even love season 3. It has its problems. It's not for everyone. I understand that. But I think for the first time, I understood why people said, well, yeah, season 1 was great, but then it kind of fell off after that. But then season 4, I feel like, and I know plenty of people who kind of stopped watching after season 3, and they didn't get to season 4, which is such a shame, because everyone who did, I feel like, has said to me, oh, but season 4 is where it really picked up again. And yeah, I agree. I think season 4, not that that the quality was massively improved over some bad seasons, but just that I think the story that they were trying to tell, the Duffer Brothers, has truly come into focus starting into season 4. And now we head into season 5, which is the final season. I had, been excited. I had been anticipating just like everyone else. I had seen most of the main trailers. I had even watched the first 5 minutes that they were releasing online. But I wanted to know as little as possible, other than some of the little hints here and there from various interviews and things like that I just happened to see. So I went into it pretty much, as blind could be, doing what I do. Not that I didn't know anything, but I tried to stay away from as much of the plot as I could. I think, look, for season 5, right? And it's hard to review this knowing that we don't know, we don't have the full picture. I have some things in here that I will talk about that I think left me a little bit wanting. It's hard to say I don't like them because I just don't know how things are going to pan out over the whole season. And again, I don't think it's fair to make final judgments on a season when you've only seen half of it, right? But we're talking about the first half. We're talking about that. I'm going to talk about the full season once I've seen everything, hopefully in early January. But, it's not to say that I don't have things that I don't love and things that I think certain characters have certain storylines that are not as fleshed out or certain storylines that I don't think are going in the right directions. There are things here and there that we'll talk about in vague terms in the non-spoiler discussion, and then we will turn to spoilers towards the end of this. However, I will say, and it's hard because I'm seeing it for the first time. I don't know how to compare it to the other seasons, but this season is foot to the gas. It is full throttle. Everything is high octane. You barely have a moment to breathe. And so in that regard, it's not the same necessarily as other seasons where you're kind of building up to something interesting. I've noticed in rewatching Stranger Things seasons 1 through 4 is that the beginnings of the seasons, right? You're slowly getting acclimated to the idea that there's something wrong here and we have to kind of figure out what that is. In season 2, it was Will being possessed, and then in season 3, it was the Mind Flayer and Billy and the rats. And all that good stuff in season 4. It's Vecna, right? This season, it's just go. It's time to go. And there are certain things, right, that are being set up throughout the season that I'm sure will pay off and build up to something later. But I think that one of the biggest differences for season 5 is that you have all these characters. You take a little bit of time at the beginning to establish where they are and where they've been since season 4. But then after that, it's just time to go. And I think that works to its benefit because there's just so much happening here that while season 4 also, like season 5 rather, like season 4, has ridiculously long episodes. I think the last episode of volume 1 was about an hour and a half long. It feels like still there's so much that they could explore. It feels like there is still more left on the table, which is a crazy thing to say, but I feel like it's true. And I think we'll kind of segue into maybe something I didn't love as much, but also something I do love. There are so many characters in this show now. There are so many characters in this show now. I'm not even going to capture all of them, but just to give an example. Hopper, Eleven, Mike, Will, Dustin, Lucas, Steve, Nancy, Jonathan, Erica, Murray, Joyce, Robin. I probably repeated a bunch of them a few times, but you get the point, right? Like, there's so many characters in the show now. And, you know, on the one hand, while I would like a status quo update on where each one of them are, and you kind of get an idea of where each one of them are at the beginning of this, it's just time to go. So this is not the season, I don't think, for huge character changes or things like that. The characters have arcs, right? The characters are going through things. I think a few characters that stand out to me as having more interesting arcs. Will, we heard before that Will was going to have a very prominent role. And I think that makes a lot of sense because of, you know, the fact that Will was the first one taken. He started it all in episode 1, season 1, and now it's kind of coming full circle with Will again, right? So Will, I think it has a lot of interesting things going on with him. I think Mike and Nancy have some really interesting things going on with their characters as well. And so I think they're being elevated. And yeah, I think the other characters have their roles to play. It's just that we don't get to explore a whole lot of where they are. There's some interesting storylines. Like, I'm not going to say every single character's storyline works. Or at least so far. I think there are a couple where I'm trying to balance out the fact of, is this what I would want to see personally? And I'm just not liking where they're going personally, but I can see where they're going story-wise. Or is it a case of, it's just not quite working story-wise? I don't know. I think there is a balance there that I'm kind of interested to see how they're going to wrap up everything in later seasons. But there are definitely characters that we'll talk about in the spoiler discussion where I am like, yeah, I wish we got a different side of this character. Or I'm not sure where this arc is going, you know, all that kind of stuff. But this season, it's bloodier, it's more brutal. There are obvious stakes, right? There are obviously stakes that are being elevated. It's the final season. Also new players, right? There are some new characters in here. I'm not going to spoil all of them, but one that we knew that was going to be having a presence in the show or in season 5 is Linda Hamilton's character, and she's interesting in her own right, though she's not given a whole lot to do in this first volume, but I think that she has a lot of interesting things that are going to transpire over the next few episodes. And obviously the threat of Vecna that is looming. And again, we saw him in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler. You know, Vecna is in season 5, surprise, surprise. But I think that what is transpiring in and around Vecna's mind and what he's doing in this, at least first volume, and the places where we don't see him and the places where we might see him, I think is interesting. I think there are still a lot of questions that remain to be answered, and so I'm very curious to see where we go from there. But I do think that as we head into the final volume, as we head into the final 4 episodes here, I think that the stakes have been set, and now it's just a matter of, okay, let's untangle, let's unravel, let's unwind this big thread here that we've got, and see where we all go, because I think that there is I'm not saying that the show is buckling under its own weight. There's a lot of amazing stuff happening here. The visuals, by the way, one of the things I noticed immediately from the trailers is just that the visuals are, the way that the cinematography is, the way that the shots are composed. There's a great one-take shot in the final episode of this volume that I just don't think that the Duffer Brothers had done before, which is amazing. It's great doing a one-take. Some of the action is incredible. The Upside Down is really intriguing, and it's great, but also the real world has some really interesting things going on there. I think that this season has a lot going for it, and I think that it's in building up towards a final, confrontation, a final episode, a final moment. I think that this season, if you just take it as a final goodbye or a final just a moment to really escalate everything and bring it all to a head, and not really think of this season in the same regard, I think, as the first 4 seasons where you're kind of building up from beginning to end in its own self-contained way. This is a different season. I think this season is really trying to say goodbye, and it's trying to wrap up all these different things. And I think it's doing a really good job of it so far. I'm just curious to see where we go from there. One of the things, too, that I'll leave off this non-spoiler discussion is that this season does a great job of tension. There is so much tension throughout these entire 4 episodes. There is just heightened tension and ways where characters are doing things that you're like, oh my gosh, and then things that characters say that you're kind of like, oh no. I'm not to spoil anything, not to reveal anything, but there is a lot going on here that I'm really, I'm happy to be back in this world. I'm excited to see where it ends. I'm going to be very sad. There are some emotional moments in these 4 episodes as well. I think the ending as well of this volume is, I think it's just tremendous. It's great. And it kind of leads to exciting pathways of where this season is going to go as a whole. So can't really say a whole lot else in the non-spoilers about this volume, because I just don't know where we're going to go, and I don't want to reveal anything that's happened in this volume. But those are my thoughts on Stranger Things Season 5, Volume 1. Let's transition into spoilers really quickly before we get on out of here. Okay, I think it's great that Will is powering up, because I think Will has had enough. I think we all agree Will has had enough of being a helpless kid who's just been puppeted around by Vecna. Will has had enough. I am really excited to see where he and perhaps 11 together are going to power up and do some great things, do some really interesting things in the second volume. Speaking of 11, I really thought Hopper was a goner. Now, I'm not saying that he won't be in this season. I just feel like it's coming, especially with the foreshadowing of what he said to Elle and revealing his what do you say, his backup plan, his failsafe, right? I think that it's just foreshadowing something very tragic, but also heroic for him as well. I liked the twist that, because I kind of think everyone's like, oh, it has to be Vecna in there, and I kind of thought, well, surely it's not Vecna in there, right? That would be kind of weird. Now the question will become, as we start off Volume 2, what has Vecna actually been doing? Where has he actually been if he's not been in that cage? Because who is in that cage is number 8, right? 11's sister from that episode in season 2 that everyone kind of hates, but she's back, and I think that this is a very interesting and compelling way to bring her back, actually. So I'm excited to see what they do with that character as she and 11 reunite, and I wonder what happens to all the other kids, or what happened to all the other kids as well. I wonder if that will come into play. Speaking of character arcs, though, I have to say, not everyone worked for me. Like, I get why Dustin is angry and why Dustin is not Dustin. It's just so jarring, though, after watching seasons 1 through 4, that Dustin, yeah, he gets serious. Of course he gets serious, and especially in season 4, he has, he's taking some leadership, right? But this version of Dustin just makes me sad. And the fact that he and Steve are arguing this entire volume, it's not, I don't know, it just makes me a little sad. And I hope that in this last volume we get a little bit more of that Steve Dustin dynamic, because just watching season 3 again, it just makes me happy. It makes everyone happy, right? Also, Steve and Jonathan, I don't know. It's funny. Like, it is actually funny. The scene at the beginning where they're all climbing up to the top of the tower, it's funny and it's entertaining. I just hope that they resolve it in a way where it doesn't, it's starting to give YA love triangle vibes a little bit, and I just hope that the way that they resolve all of that is going to be satisfying for the audience. Other characters that don't have a lot to do, I think Lucas and Max are going to have a lot to do. I like the way that they incorporate Max a lot in Holly's vision. Oh, Holly, by the way. I think that's a great introduction to a character that, yes, has been there before, but for all intents and purposes is a new character to the show. And so I like that a lot. And I like how they incorporate Max into her mind or Henry memories or whatever. I think that that's going to be really cool. And I think Lucas and Max are going to have a lot to do in later seasons, or in later episodes as well. I like Mike. I like Nancy. Like I said, I think that because of what happens to their parents and to Holly, I think that they have a very central role to play, which I think is great. I'm not going to lie. I didn't love Hopper and Elle in this volume. I think that they just didn't have a whole lot to do other than walk around the Upside Down and kind of be mad at each other. And then Hopper kind of fake death, does his fake death thing, which I think, again, the moments that they have with one another where it's harkening back to their dynamic as father and daughter, it's great. But then the moments where Elle is just, kind of trying to push him away again, it makes me a little bit sad. So I'm glad that wasn't the final moment that Hop had with 11. But yeah, guys, I think that, I like that. Actually, I was really surprised. I thought Vecna was totally going to take Will, because we hear that line in the trailer, right? You're going to help me one last time. And so I totally thought that Vecna was going to take Will into the Upside Down as a prisoner. I was really surprised that he didn't. I don't know. Is Vecna's plan to have Will be superpowered? Maybe that is part of the plan here. So we'll see. We'll see about that. But I think it's interesting that Vecna just kind of disappears into the Upside Down again at the end of Volume 1. But again, that final action scene as well is just great. The way that it was shot, and the one take where Mike is protecting the kids. I think Derek, he's growing on me. I think he's playing the role that he needs to play. So there is that. But guys, again, really excited about Volume 2. A lot of really exciting things are being set up here, and I can't wait, guys. I'm happy. Stranger Things, it's back. So look forward, by the way, for those of you who have stuck around, to a revisited or rewatch kind of segment in the subsequent weeks, where we'll dive into seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then that'll lead up to hopefully my review of the final 4 episodes and the season as a whole. And then, of course, eventually on my own, I will definitely do a full series rewatch at some point. So, guys, those were my thoughts on Stranger Things Season 5, Volume 1, Episodes 1 through 4. What did you guys think of Season 5, Volume 1? Let me know in the comments down below.